Well, kia ora and good afternoon, everyone. As you all know, the last few years have been economically challenging for New Zealand. Rampant inflation and rising interest rates have squeezed family budgets, and that squeeze has driven the country into recession, and now unemployment is rising. There's no doubt about it, it's currently a very tough time for Kiwis dealing with the cost of living, which is why we know as a government that rebuilding the economy to lower the cost of living is job number one. And that's why from today, new measures kick in to support Kiwis struggling with the cost of living. From today, the Auckland regional fuel tax will be abolished, saving motorists 11.5 cents per litre every time they fill up. And if that's a hard-working tradie in a Toyota Hilux, it's about $9 per fill. If it's a senior in a Toyota Corolla hatchback, it's about $6 every time they fill up. And of course, from today, Family Boost also kicks in, with families eligible for a 25% rebate up to $150 per fortnight. And of course, tax relief is coming at the end of the month too. Yesterday was the final day of the Coalition Government's Q2 action plan, and these ambitious quarterly action plans are important because they focus our public sector agencies and our ministers on delivering what matters most to New Zealanders. Our quarterly action plans are focused on three key things: rebuilding the economy, restoring law and order, and delivering better public services. We were proud to deliver all 49 actions in our 100-day plan, and we've kept the momentum going by delivering 35 of the 36 actions in our Q2 action plan. To give you a feel for it, in the last quarter we've delivered a budget that has reduced wasteful government spending while investing more in frontline services like health, education and police. From July 31, Kiwis will be going home with more in their back pocket thanks to the tax relief that is coming. And we've taken action to restore law and order by bringing back 3 strikes and introducing a serious young offender category alongside our military-style academy pilot that will help young offenders turn their lives around. And we are making meaningful changes in education to help our children succeed: structured literacy, better teacher training, bringing back charter schools, and a new way of assessing progress that Erica Stamford will have more to say about this week. The one item in our Q2 action plan that we haven't fully ticked off in the plan relates to the disestablishment of TPK. The government has agreed to propose changes to consult on, which was the first part of that commitment, but the consultation itself has not yet begun and will be released in the coming weeks. As mentioned, our quarterly action plans are effective because they create momentum and they drive focus, and we have every intention of continuing in this way. Today we are launching the government's Q3 action plan, and today I'll take you through some of the 40 actions that we are taking there. A significant focus is on restoring law and order, and this includes passing 4 laws that will crack down on criminal activity and support offenders to turn their lives around. We will, 1, give police more powers to go after gangs by restricting their abilities to associate and banning gang patches in public. We will give police more power to get guns out of the hands of criminals. We will increase the access to effective rehabilitation for prisoners on remand, and we will improve efficiency in the courts and increase access to justice. In addition to these laws coming into effect, the government will introduce legislation to toughen up sentencing and to ensure that there are real consequences for crime, while also launching a military-style academy pilot for serious and young offenders. We're also taking steps to keep Kiwis safer on our roads, and will introduce legislation to enable roadside testing for drug driving. Improving education outcomes remains a key part of the plan. The Q3 plan sees the opening of applications for new or converted charter schools, releasing a draft of new English and maths curriculum, and continuing initiatives to improve school attendance. As I've said before, New Zealand has become a country in which it is too hard to get things done, so it is also vital that we take steps to make it easier to deliver long-term projects. So also prominent in our Q3 agenda are actions to deliver high-quality infrastructure that will drive economic growth, boost productivity and enhance our way of life. And this includes passing the legislation on our local water done well policy to deliver financially sustainable water services, opening the $1.2 billion Regional Infrastructure Fund to applications, and making Cabinet decisions on sensible changes to the FastTrack consenting program. This government is committed to delivering for New Zealanders, which has been demonstrated by the success of the 100-day plan and the Q2 action plan. Kiwis expect us to continue the momentum, and I am determined to do so. And lastly, before I open it up to any questions, can I just acknowledge Newshub, who are covering this press conference for a final time after 35 years. It is an organisation that has played a big part in the lives of many Kiwis, and I just want to thank the Newshubbers, both past and present, for their contributions and for all that you have given over the better part of 4 decades. And with that, I'm happy to take your questions.
You used the phrase ambitious when you were talking about the Q3 plan, but some of those include things like banning gang patches and other things that you've previously signalled before. Is this really ambitious enough? And if it is, shouldn't you be using words or have more lofty targets and things that you've pretty much already started the process?
Yeah, so what I'm doing is sharing each quarter what we're doing to drive as a government, and we're driving the internal processes of the public service agencies and also our ministers. And so you're quite right, there are some codification where we say take decisions or cabinet decisions, introduce legislation or actually pass legislation. A lot of the law that we just talked about is things that we introduced in our first 100 days, has gone through the select committee process and has gone through a couple of readings and is now going to be passed. And particularly in the law and order space, where I know I'm sick of it, I know people are very frustrated with the progress that we're making on law and order. It's important for us to make sure that we actually get these legislations passed and delivered in August, September, so they can be operationalised in October and November.
So do you think ambitious is the right word?
Absolutely, yep. We are super ambitious for New Zealand. We're very aspirational. We're very positive about our future, but we are determined to turn the country around, to get it working again and to get it moving in a good direction.
Why did you fail to tick off that TPK exercise?
Yeah, it was two parts to it. One was to agree a proposal to disestablish TPK, which we have done as a cabinet, but the second part of it was to take that proposal out for consultation to the public, which hasn't been achieved. That will, of course, happen in the next few weeks.
I mean, it seems pretty simple to launch a public consultation, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, there's quite a lot to go through, as you know, with TPK. It's been a hell of a mess for the last 6 years. There's a lot to unpack. We want to agree the model and the proposal first and foremost, which we've agreed, but now it is about going out and actually getting the public's feedback around the proposal that we've got.
Is it because Penny Simmons had too much on her plate with that disability portfolio as well?
No, I don't think so. It just genuinely has been really complex. And look, I mean, I'd sooner set an ambition and we fall a bit short and be very transparent and very straight up about it than not try at all. And we're doing a lot, as you can see, every quarter. We're being very disciplined about what we are doing and what we're not doing, and that's the way that we have to be in order to turn the country around. That's what's needed in a turnaround job.
You were pretty quick to sack both Melissa Lee and Penny Simmons from their jobs when you didn't think they were doing a good job. It's become quite apparent that Shane Beattie did not have control of the cancer drug situation at all. Why are you not holding him to the same standard?
Well, look, I'm very proud of what we've delivered on cancer drugs. I said that we had a great proposal in opposition about wanting to get more cancer drugs to New Zealanders, 13 at that time. We've ended up delivering, as you know, 26 and 54 new medicines that previously wouldn't have existed in New Zealand, have been available to New Zealanders. Certainly would have been available under the previous administration, given they hadn't funded the core Farm Act pieces of it. But yes, as I said to you at the time, we've come about it a different way, but I think we've got to a much better outcome and a better result in the end.
But specifically, Shane Beattie did not have control of that policy.
Oh, I disagree. There was a strong commitment to deliver more cancer drugs to New Zealanders. What we were debating was not the what, but was actually how to go about doing it. And there was a number of pathways that we had to consider and could consider. We ended up choosing one that I think delivered a much better what and a better set of outcomes for New Zealanders.
What did Amy Adams mean when she said that she was not able to advance the changes that she believed needed to be made on the Butter Warrable?
I'm not sure. You'd have to ask her.
Do you think there are big changes that need to be made on that board that you're not, as a government, making?
Yes, I do. I think there is needing to be big change in Health New Zealand. I think it's an organisation that we're putting $16.7 billion more into health, as you know, from the budget. It's one where we've put $1.8 billion into fund Farm Act, and I know another $600 million on drugs. But I just say to you, Health New Zealand needs to be a high-performing organisation because we're putting good money, and I want to make sure it's a highly performing organisation with a great leadership team.
And in relation to your item to clarify the employment status of contractors,
yep.
Are you going to get ahead of the court decision on that and legislate regardless, or are you going to wait for that court decision?
Again, you'll just have to wait and see. We'll announce that when we're ready to do that.
But are you going to be guided by what the court decides, or are you just going to legislate?
Again, I'm not going to go into the details of what and pre-announce what we're proposing, but you can see there's a very strong desire. We know it's an area that needs to be fixed and cleaned up, and clarity needs to be in place, and we'll have more to say about that later.
Prime Minister, you began...
Hey, how are you?
You began this press conference talking about the cost of living and how
Yes.
difficult it is for Kiwis at the moment. Can you go through the specific actions for your next quarter that addresses the cost of living?
Yeah, look, I think certainly you're seeing our tax relief will come in July 31, which will be really helpful. You've seen the changes that we've announced for July 1. start to bite in this third quarter. That'll be going through. We're going to continue to work hard to get inflation marching down. That is a series of ongoing initiatives about making sure government spending is being well delivered and well focused. As a result, we can bring domestic inflation down, bring interest rates ultimately down, get the economy growing, and obviously lower levels of unemployment. But I think a lot of what we want to do in the economic space in the coming quarter is get the infrastructure that we know that we need to get going to improve the productivity of New Zealand. And I know that sort of has a more medium to long-term benefit, but actually getting that foundation in place is really very important because we're going to deal with lowering inflation and dealing with the cost of living. That's our short-term financial focus of getting the economy moving again. But the second thing is that we really have to have a really good growth plan for this country. And I just want to say to everybody, I know it's tough now, but we actually have a fantastic future ahead of us in this country. But for that to happen, you've got to invest in world-class education, you've got to get modern infrastructure in place, and that's a big focus of us in this quarter.
Prime Minister.
Sorry, Laura, do you want to go again?
We're talking about things specifically like the building products. So
Yep.
and you're hoping that that's going to have eventually a flow-on effect.
It's all of those things, because essentially what we're trying to do is unblock the system and to get the economy moving again and sort of aerate it. And a big part of that is removing what we call red tape. That is just frankly regulation that doesn't have a benefit. And that's a good example. If we can lower building cost products by actually getting the legislation introduced this quarter to get that moving so we can take products from overseas that therefore are cheaper and more competitive, that's great. Because why? Well, a house in New Zealand is 50% more expensive to build than a house in Australia. Building costs have gone up 41% in the last 5 years. So it's all of those things. And I know, what we are focused on is we've got to rebuild the economy by lowering inflation to get rid of the cost of living crisis. But then we're also bending our minds very clearly through the budget, but in the back half of this year, to write what are the 5 big things that are going to help grow this country and make it more productive, and so that we can all enjoy a higher standard of living. And a lot of it is some of those things in the infrastructure space.
So is there any further funding going to Wairoa in terms of their recovery?
Yeah, good question. Mark Mitchell was there last week, as you know, for a few days. Nicola Willis also had a long-standing engagement in Hawke's Bay, so she was able to see things in Hawke's Bay in particular. And we sent our 3 local MPs home at the end of last week in the middle of urgency so that they could be on the ground as well. And I hope to go, Mark will go back there this week, and I'll hope to go on Saturday as well myself. What we're focused on is probably 2 things. One is, you're right, it's Wairoa that's really taken the brunt of it, and the river has broken in a place where it has historically not broken before. There's a need for us to do a review of the regional council's actions around the bar and the management of the bar out of the river. And the second piece is we stand ready to go with any more assistance financially that's needed as well.
But no decisions have been made thus far?
Mark Mitchell will have more to say about it through the course of this week. But what I'd say to you is we are open to investing more. We've got, as you know, $1 billion in this budget going into the regions. We've got $7.5 billion in multiple capital allowances as well. And we're very open to supporting Wairoa in particular.
Prime Minister.
Sorry. Mark will have more to say about it in
Prime
the next few
Minister,
days.
Andrew Mackenzie's redundancy from Kainga Ora, why is that a good thing?
Well, look, ultimately that's a decision around an employment contract between the board and the CEO. I can probably comment on the broader KO initiatives, as you well know, which is that it has been a chronically underperforming organisation. It's a large organisation. It needs to deliver better, and as a result, we've changed the chairman, we're refreshing the board, and importantly, we're getting a turnaround plan in place by the end of the year.
One of the former board members says that the whole review was an overreaction. Are they right?
I don't think it's an overreaction when you look at the debt that was being racked up and was likely to be racked up. When you think about the huge amount of assets that are sitting there and how they are managed, I think there's very good reasons, as we talked about with Chris Bishop and myself and with you all, about why we needed a review and we need to make a powerful intervention there.
Do you expect that a lot of people...
Do you think
Sorry?
the problems with Kainga Ora, though, sat with the individuals running it or with the instructions that they were being given
All I'd
by
say to
government?
you is we're interested in results and outcomes, and then the management and the board are the people that deliver those results and outcomes. And so replacing the chair, which is something the government does, replacing and refreshing the board, and ultimately get to asking for a turnaround plan is what we've asked for. As to then what happens with respect to the board and the management team, that is a decision for them. But I want to be under no illusions. It's a $45 billion enterprise that has been performing very badly, has run up huge amounts of debt and was due to run out more over the next 10 years. And we need a powerful intervention to stop that. We want to see a strong commercial focus. We want to see a better customer focus. And we want to see a good culture emerge inside the organisation.
What about the 6-month payout? What about the 6-month payout? Well, what about the 6-month payout that Mackenzie's receiving? You know, what do you say to taxpayers who might look at that and think, you know, is that really the best use of taxpayer dollars? Well,
I'd just say those are ultimately decisions for the board and the CEO, and for the board to make around their CEO and the employment of a CEO and a management team.
Prime Minister,
the
Select Committee isn't due to report back on the FastTrack bill until September. Why are you signalling a need to make changes now? Is that a recognition that you've unnecessarily...
No, not at all. We genuinely are waiting for the Select Committee feedback. As you've heard the Minister say from day one, we're up for any sensible changes that we think can strengthen the legislation. So we're very open to hearing that feedback. And then, as you've heard from the Minister, happy to take any adaptation or any changes to that legislation after that point.
Could taking mining out of that legislation be one of those?
I'm not going to presuppose those outcomes. I think we need to let the process run and let the Minister digest it and see what else needs to be strengthened.
Did you watch the US presidential debate on Friday, and what did you think of the that you saw?
I was coming out of Wanaka in Queenstown, so I saw little bits of it from Matariki and opening up a chairlift and the Remarkables. But I saw bits of it. But again, those are issues for US domestic politics. My job is to work with whoever the public selects.
And so
You're
is the New Zealand government preparing for a possible Trump presidency?
Again, the New Zealand government and myself will build the most excellent relationship we can with whichever leader is selected by the American people. That's my job, is to act in New Zealand's national interests and to build a rapport and a relationship with whoever is selected as a leader from any country.
What would it mean to have a Trump presidency and for New Zealand, and in particular a 10% universal tariff on New Zealand goods?
Well, again, you're getting well ahead of yourself. Again, we need to let US domestic politics run its course. My job is to make sure I can work with whoever is selected as the new president.
You've done a fair
military-style youth academies, Prime Minister. Do you have a start date this month when that trial will start? And can you run us through the day-to-day of the in-residence component, what that will actually look like?
Yeah, look, it's starting, I don't have a particular date, but I know it's starting in the month of July. And again, it's been, it's taken on board a lot of learnings from different programs and the bits that have worked and the bits that haven't kind of worked. So essentially, it's a 3-month residential piece and a 9-month community-based piece. Obviously, there's bits around, regular discipline and routine and skills and, teamwork and all those kind of good sort of exercises that you would expect when people think of a boot camp. But as you well know, and I've tried to explain this many, many times before, and I think some have just started to get it, we've got our community organisations embedded from day one as well, because these are high-risk, highly vulnerable young people, and we want to make powerful, targeted interventions in their life. And if that means changing their housing circumstances when they come out, meaning making sure that they've actually got those skills with the trauma that they're dealing with and some of the issues that they have and the complex needs that they have, we've got that embedded from day one as well.
So do you know specifically day-to-day in that in-residence component what the young people will be doing?
Yes, Oranga Tamariki do, but again, that first part in the residential program is about building discipline, about building teamwork.
I asked the same question to the Children Minister last week. She didn't know those specific details. You don't seem to know those specific details. Are you confident that Oranga Tamariki do know those details?
Absolutely. I've sat down with Oranga Tamariki, with the police, with others that have been involved in the program. I'm very confident we're going to have a really good pilot. Again, the point of the pilot is to make sure
but
before
you don't know what's going to happen day to day.
Well, I have enough of an idea. As I just said to you, in the first 3 months, it's going to be a lot about discipline, around habits, around teamwork, around some physical exercise. But in addition, from day one, there will also be the community organisations in there. That is important because you can actually get changed behaviour in a residential program, but actually it's the 9 months and the resettling back into the community that is the challenging part. And so we'll continue to work in that way. Sorry, Jenna.
The Northland Regional Council is waiting for government to confirm more funding for Caulerpa removal. They say all their eradication work will be undone without more funding. Is more funding coming?
Again, I've spoken to the Regional Council chair. I know well. They've done a great job up there. We put some extra money in from memory, I think, back in April. I'm quite concerned about Caulerpa and the threat that it represents to New Zealand in particular. I know many other countries have not been able to eradicate it, but I think we should do everything we can and use some Kiwi ingenuity to try and solve it. So what we were testing in the north was actually, can we get at scale larger dredging equipment and suction and vacuum equipment in place. I had a chat probably to the chair a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, and I was hearing initially that it was going well. There is a formal review that NPI will do of it, and then if we have to spend more money behind it, we're prepared to do that too.
They're saying it'll cost $100 million to do the job properly and deal with Caulerpa everywhere.
Well, again, I just say to you, let's let NPI do what we agreed to do, which was we'll get to the end of 30th of June, was the trial period to see whether we've got a proof of concept that we can scale up and actually deal with this issue. It's really challenging. Other countries, as you know, have the problem and haven't been able to eradicate it. We're trying something quite different, which is vacuum. There's a whole bunch of issues about particle sizes and actually do you remove it or do you just sort of stamp it out for a bit. We need to get that review done, and then if we have to put more money into it, we're open to that conversation.
Would be eradication, though.
Yeah, that's what I want us to strive for. I want us to be working really hard, using some Kiwi ingenuity, activating iwi, regional councils, district councils, the public, and all our NGO organisations to work together on that. And frankly, Jenna, the other thing I'd say is the problems are different in different parts of the country as well, where it's well established Aotea, a Great Barrier, a little bit more in the north, less so in Waiheke and other parts of the Gulf as well.
Is scrapping Auckland's fuel tax going to make it harder to fund desperately needed infrastructure?
No, there's $400 million, I think, around about that, maybe a bit more, that's sitting in a bank account in Auckland. That's going to be agreed to be spent on critical infrastructure projects in Auckland. We've agreed that between the government and council, which is really good, so the Eastern Busway and a number of other projects as well. The second thing I'd say is that actually getting Auckland water care sorted, it was sort of something I was really proud about, the way the government and the council worked on that. That for a couple of $100,000 we found a model, rather than the $1.2 billion, to actually separate the balance sheets so that actually water care can borrow its own money for those lifelong assets, and that actually freed up $800 million onto the Auckland Council balance sheet for them to spend on infrastructure as well. So I know it doesn't sound particularly arresting to many people listening to that, but it is a mechanism that actually has unlocked quite a lot of value, and we know there's a lot to do in Auckland. We've got good investments going into local roads. I think there's another $400 million going into potholes and local roads, but we'll continue to do that.
Can I just clarify?
Sorry.
Yes. Mark Mitchell said this morning he would take an appeal to Cabinet today for more funding, so did that happen?
Yeah, I don't talk about what happens in Cabinet, but I said to you that Mark will have more to say shortly. Yeah.
Can I also just...
Scrutiny Week.
Sorry?
During Scrutiny Week,
yes.
kind of raised concerns about the funding of sign language interpreters, saying that if more money can arrive, that would have to stop. Would you be willing to see that stop?
No, I think it's really important. Sign language is one of our official languages in New Zealand, and it was pretty awesome actually to be down at Matariki in Wanaka, and we actually had te reo sign languages translating our speeches and remarks. So, no, I'm a big fan of it, and I'm not aware of the particular issue, but again, I just say to you, this is government spending is a big budget, and I'm sure we can find money for that sort of thing.
Just kind of on the same vein as that, when you first came into office, you were quite critical of the fact that Parliament usually didn't sit over the summer periods, and you were saying that politicians didn't need that big of a break. In basically the 7 weeks, the last 3 weeks and the next few, there's one sitting week out of 7. Are you frustrated that you're not getting enough time to pass your legislative agenda?
Look, we're moving as fast as we can, as you can see, and so I think by any admission, people would say we've hit the first 2 quarters pretty hard. You can see that we're going to continue to keep that pace up over the third quarter. Obviously, the setting of Parliament and the schedule is something that's done through the House and through Parliament. My view is we'll work pretty hard on it, and where we need to, like you saw last week, go through urgency because of the post-budget piece. We'll continue to do that.
Is it a bit frustrating for you that you had to use that urgency because Parliament was sitting so little in the last?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a bit of an anomaly, sort of, as I understand why the last few weeks have been like that. But I can just tell you, the pace of government for us is just full bore. So we're full steam ahead.
And you
Adam?
rebuild the economy.
Sorry, I'll come back to you, Jenna. Can I go to Adam?
Justice Minister Paul Goldsmith has talked previously that the gang powers wouldn't be kind of in place until November. So is that kind
Yeah, so you might remember in the first 100 days we had, introduced legislation and find a way to get that into the House, which we've done. We've gone through select committee processes, and now we'll do the third readings and pass the legislation, I think, by the end of September, but some of it will be in August/September, I suspect, depending upon the legislative calendar and work plan. And then, as I understand it from police, certainly they'll be starting to operationalise that in October and November.
Right, so the legislation will be passed and then the powers won't come in.
Well, it's just practically speaking for them to operationalise, what they need to do with those legislations around the serious, around the gang pieces in particular. That'll start to kick in, as I said. I think the laws. We're just debating on when we can get it done, and whether it's August and/or September. There's a bit to get through, as you can imagine, and we want to get those final readings done and passed into law, and then it's up to the police to take that law and then make sure that they've got the operational resources and support to do it.
Can you rebuild the economy and ease the cost of living section? You've got released a draft of the second emissions reduction plan. Is the climate going to pay the price for
No, not at all. I mean, we are very confident we can grow the economy and deliver on our emissions targets and goals that we've set ourselves, and so we'll have more to say about that very shortly, but there's been very good progress across government, across a number of portfolios that are impacting the emissions plan, and I'm very pleased with that work, actually. I'm very proud of how that's going. It's been well led by Simon Watts.
Also in that section you've said take cabinet decisions on legislation to support congestion charging. How's that easing the cost of living, putting an extra cost on?
Well, what that's actually about is easing congestion, and as you would know, in the last Parliament, all parties across the Parliament actually supported congestion charging, or time and use charging as it's called. Simeon Brown's leading the work on that and the thinking on that. All parties recognise it's a great way, not for raising revenue, it's actually a way of actually managing and directing congestion.
If it's not for raising revenue, will you ring-fence it?
Sorry?
If it's not for raising revenue, will you ring-fence that and give it back to Transport Project?
Oh, look, we'll let Simeon Brown go through that process, but I just say to you, having sat on that Transport Select Committee a few years ago, there's very good bipartisan support for congestion charging. Again, we need to work with some of the local councils. We've been talking with Auckland, for example, about that. We'll have more to say about that.
Because with the Auckland fuel tax, it was ring-fenced to use for Transport Project.
Yeah, I just say to you again, the Auckland regional fuel tax, there's over $400 million sitting in a bank account that has been not spent yet, and so we're determined to make sure that's used on key infrastructure in Auckland. And with respect to congestion charging, what it's really about, when you look at how it's been used around the world, is really about getting people to manage their schedules in a way to get an 8 to 15% reduction in congestion. And I'm just saying that would be fantastic to achieve, because that would drive so much more productivity into the New Zealand economy as well.
Forgive me if you just
Sorry.
said this, but are you signalling that the congestion charging will be available to other councils around the country and not just Auckland?
Again, I'm not going to get into that now. I'll let Simeon talk to that when we have that fully agreed, but I'm just signalling to you the intention for us to progress that work over this coming quarter.
What do you make of being sent an alleged terrorist manifesto?
Sorry?
The alleged terrorist manifesto from Australia, what do you make of them?
Look, again, we've got well-established protocols on handling things like that, and I don't talk about security matters.
Can I just go back to Thomas's question about Uber? MB has gone out to stakeholders to consult on the policy advice on this. Do you think that is premature given the court cases not been...
No, not necessarily. It's just important that we get clarity in the system and the workplace relations area. So that's, again, what Minister Van Velden will lead.
Would it be appropriate, though, to legislate before that verdict has been...
Again, I'm just not going to get into preempting what we may or may not do. What I'm just signalling, again, in the spirit of transparency, is this is what our government will be focused on in the next 13 weeks, and it's important that we move that one forward and that we get more clarity emerging about the role of contractors in particular.
The question isn't what decision you're going to take. The question is whether you're going to decide to do that thing before or after the court decides.
Yeah, again, I'm not getting into it. We'll let the processes run. We'll have more to say about that when we can talk to that with more detail. Sorry, Laura.
The boot camps that Jack was asking about. I understand that you keen to have that kind of an intellectual debate about it, but just NZD, has come out and said that they don't think that these types of, programs work for them to be part of for young people. Mark Mitchell has said on a couple of occasions that he thinks that NZD will play a critical part in this. Could you kind of walk through that, and whether you
Yeah, I'm not sure where the comments come from, because today the NZDF and police, retired officers or active personnel in the forces or in the police are actually involved in something called the LSV program. It's a volunteer thing. It's not mandated by the government for them to participate in it. They are individuals who choose to get involved in that because they want to make that impact on young people's lives. That program, granted, is for an older person, 18 to 25 from memory, but the key principles of that are actually have helped inform some of what we're doing here. And so from a New Zealand Defence Force, as you know, we have Oranga Tamariki taking the lead in one of their residential facilities. It's in Palmerston North, so it's actually close to the defence assets that are there that can be used, as I understand, from time to time. But we've also had Defence inputting into the program about what sorts of things do work as well. So I don't know where those comments have come from.
They came from the Defence Force.
No, I get that, but I'm just saying to you, in the spirit of Defence Force has never run a program apart from the LSV, which they do on a voluntary basis, that individuals choose to participate in that.
So they specified that they weren't comparable, that they shouldn't.
Sorry?
They specified that they shouldn't be compared to.
Well, what I'm just saying to you is we've had LSV people involved in actually the design of the program that we're putting together for young people. Yeah. And look, again, I'll just say it to you, and I said it to you before. It's all very interesting, the debate and the discussion. It's very intellectually curious, and I'm sure everyone's got lots of different points of view about it. But actually, when we've got violent crime up 50%, when we've got up 33%, we've got gangs up 50%, we've got a quadrupling of ram raids, and we've got retail crime up 100%. We are going to try something different, and we're going to try this.
It's not trying something different. It has been tried before, and one of the managers of a youth justice facility who was there when it was put in place before, who I was talking to the other day, said it was an unmitigated disaster. She said that if you take young hardened criminals, you ask them to do 25 press-ups, you have fit and fast hardened criminals, then you've got your defence force saying that this type of program doesn't work in this situation. These are people with very complex needs. Not listening to the manager of a youth justice facility and not listening to the defence force and not listening
well, I'm sorry, but I have sat in meetings where we've actually discussed, how it's going to work, and there's no doubt about it. We've taken learnings from the LSV program. We've taken learnings from what's happened before. One of the big learnings, frankly, was that not having any community support embedded in from day one was a major problem. And in fact, we could get turnarounds of young people on the programs, and as soon as they went back into the community, recidivism went straight up again. So that's the bit that's very different. It's a much more nuanced, layered program that we're putting together here. And I appreciate people want to put it under the tabloid headline of a boot camp, and that's fine. But the reality is there is more sophistication going on behind the scenes. Sorry.
Are you going to guarantee there will be rehabilitation and counselling facilities for these young people?
That's right. That's what we're trying to do, is make sure that we've got the community organisations embedded in from day one and sticking with the young person after they leave the residential facility. We want to try something different. We've got a pilot going on with 10 young people. We'll kick it off this month. As soon as we start to learn what's working, what's not working, we'll tweak it as we go. But the bottom line is, I'm sorry, we are going to do something different because what we're doing isn't working.
Do you think it'll succeed?
Sorry?
Do you think it'll...
What's that? We always called it military academies. It was the media that called it boot camps. Yeah.
Do you think it'll succeed?
Well, I think we should try, shouldn't we? We should try and do something different because what we're doing is not working. So the counterfactual is pretty straightforward. We've had a fourfold increase in ram raids. I visited, the 100% increase in retail crime. Last week I spoke to a gentleman who I'd visited last year who's in hospital because he got hit by a hammer and has got a metal plate in his skull. When you go talk to those families and the victims of crime, we've got to stand up for them. So we're standing up for the victims. In this case, we're taking young offenders, serious young offenders, off the streets and out of the community, and we're investing in them with intensive interventions.
Just with you, keep comparing it to the LSV program, but the military has, the Defence Force has taken real issue with that in this OIA, saying the LSV program is for adults, it's for
18 to 25-year-olds, yep.
So you can't compare it to children. It is voluntary, so you can't compare it to a court-mandated sentence. That it is that the military in this case is only involved in the governance level, not in boots on the ground level. So they're quite different programs. Why do you keep making them?
Well, they are different programs. Yeah, they're different programs because we're actually doing something different, and that's what I've been trying to say to you, is that what we learnt in the past with the previous incarnation under the Key government, the major learning we got out of that was that we didn't have the community organisations embedded. It was a shorter run duration. You need to stick with the young person for a year. It's really intensive. You've almost got to have an individual with them the whole time. You've got to set up their coming back into community. There's a whole bunch of work there. There are principles in the LSV that are relevant. There are some that won't be relevant, but we've taken pieces of that. And we've seen other work that's been happening in the community with different community organisations working with troubled young people that we think is useful too. So look, all in all, we take a bit from everything, we mix it all together, we put a program together we think it's got the best shot of making the biggest intervention in these young people's lives. And again, I just make no apologies for it because I'm sorry, but we have to do something different here. We have said that our second goal is to restore law and order so that people feel safer. And at the moment, Kiwis don't feel safe.
Are you willing to, if in 12 months' time it turns out that these things just really aren't working, are you willing to come down here and say, we tried it and we got it wrong?
Well, that's why we're doing a pilot, to make sure that we get learnings along the way so that we can optimise before we scale up and make sure that it does work.
Is it correct to say that the NZDF will be only involved in a governance level and not in terms of the delivery of the actual program?
I think that's a fair characterisation. They've been embedded in the design of the program and working with OT around that, as have police, as have community organisations, as has OT from their own experiences as well. Okay, sorry.
Tom and family is facing deportation and Pink has advised that he won't intervene. Don't you think they deserve ministerial intervention, especially because legal professionals say that they haven't gotten a fair hearing?
Yeah, look, I saw that story as well, and it sounded quite heartbreaking, but I just say to you, I'm not in a position where I can comment on individual immigration cases. We have a process and a protocol for that. That's now an issue for Immigration New Zealand.
Have you spoken with Pink about the case?
No, I haven't.
Please, the family has written to Chris Pink, who does have the ability, I think, to make compassionate intervention. Would you discuss, your options in that? Yeah,
look, I'm sorry, I'm just not going to get into individual immigration cases. We have a lot of them. Each of the circumstances are different, and there's lots of information involved in those individual cases, but you'd well understand as Prime Minister it's inappropriate for me to comment on individual cases. Okay, last question. Sorry, yes?
Don't you think, if you do deport this family back, don't you think this will affect New Zealand's relationship with the Pacific moving forward?
No, look, I think the relationship with the Pacific is in really good heart. I've visited some of the Pacific Islands. I've spoken to the political leaders across the islands. I'm actually due in Tonga for Pacific Island Leaders Forum. And I think New Zealand's relationship with the Pacific is continuing to improve bit by bit.
Prime Minister, on the 757 plane, there's a poll out from News Talk ZB that says 51% of Kiwis wouldn't mind spending the money to replace the plane. Labor told me today that they support replacing the plane as well.
Excellent.
Are you committed to replacing the plane?
Sorry?
Are you committed to replacing
Yes, we are, and that's why we've got a defence capability review up and running. A big component of that is looking at the aircraft. As you well know, 80% of the aircraft is actually used for troop movements, 20% is used for Prime Minister and ministerial movements and delegations. We need a solution for that, and all options are on the table, and the Defence Forces are looking at it right now.
When will that plan be published?
Sorry?
When will that plan be published? It keeps getting kicked down the road.
No, the Defence Capability Review is a very comprehensive piece of work, and what we are trying to do there is make sure that we now have new heads of the Defence Forces, Army, Navy, Air Force, and a new CDF. We have a new Minister, and we have a new Secretary of Defence. So with new leadership, I've asked them to come back and say, do a bottoms-up rebuild of our strategy through the defence capability work. That will take some time, I imagine, but a small component of that is the aircraft piece, and we can pull that out and make that decision independently.
Are you totally redrawing the DCP from what was provided earlier?
Yeah, I think it's entirely appropriate that new leaders actually sign up and are on board with the strategy that we're going to ask them to follow and to be held accountable to deliver.
The question was, are you actually doing sort of wholesale changes to the DCP as it was shaping up?
No, I just want it to be owned and delivered by a new leadership team in Defence.
It was due to be published in June. Judith Collins says September, October, but it's not in the quarter three plan, so where is it?
Well, October isn't quarter three, so we'll have a look at it closer to then.
Were you unhappy with what you'd seen of the existing suggesting one.
No, it's just in fairness, as a new leader coming in, what you don't want to do is inherit someone's previous strategy or previous work. I'm going to hold you accountable as the new leader for delivering the defence strategy. I don't want excuses for why I don't buy into it. And so when you've got a whole reset of the military, it's just been fortuitous it's sort of happened that way. I want them to build that strategy from the ground up to say, where is New Zealand's capabilities going to sit over the next 10 to 20 years? What are the domains that we want to be focused on? And a range of things that I want them to own. And I think that's entirely appropriate that that's the case.
And do you anticipate pulling the planes out of that?
Sorry?
So do you anticipate pulling the replacement of the 757s out of that plane and dealing with it?
Potentially, yeah. It's a component of it, and but we'll work our way through it. The Defence Forces are working on this and have been working on it for a bit. Yep.
Very, very quickly on the
Yes.
LSB course, there's RNZ reporting today that the staff running the military course have suffered serious mental distress, with some even suicidal, as they struggle to deal with violent and at-risk youth. Given you pointed to it as, you like elements of it and you're going to use it as part of the youth academies, has there been any considerations for further support?
All I can say is, look, I've spoken. Yeah, look, all I say to you is I've spoken to patrons of the LSV, I've spoken to parents who've had their kids on the LSV, who've come up to me in the main street of Coromandel, I think from memory, saying how wonderful the program was for changing the trajectory of their daughter's life. And so I know many of the retired police officers that have been working on the program as well talk very highly of it. So I'm not aware of those comments, in fairness, but I just say to you, it's a pretty successful program. Okay, thanks so much, team. Appreciate it.
It's not about the success of the program, it's asking about the